Hey there everybody, Mazarok here, and today we are talking Protection Warrior. I feel at this point in the beta we've gone a few weeks now with minimal to very minor tuning adjustments to tanks, even some of the tank specs seeing non-existent tuning. So it's kind of seeming like Blizzard is very happy where the tanks are. But, of course, disclaimer right off the bat, if Blizzard decides to do sweeping changes before here to Dragonflight, there could be changes, and I will, redo another video to talk about that in specific. Most of my testing has been in Mythic Plus, but I have done some other single-target testing and things like that, and the raid build isn't too dissimilar from the Mythic Plus build. But there are some things that we need to talk about. Before we do get started, though, I'm very happy to announce that I have merch. You can get your I Only Do Dungeons Fully Erect t-shirts, or your Plate Tanks Do It Better t-shirts and hoodies. Hoodies for both at the link down below. There is a Discord link down below if you want to join a wonderful community full of people, and as well as a Twitch link if you wish to support me a Twitch link down below if you want to watch me stream, and Patreon. Man, this list is getting really long. And a Patreon link. I cannot do it without people like you. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. I do have an extensive, written, detailed guide as per a lot of my talent choices and kind of moving around where I go in depth that I'm not going to go into here because I will end up talking for about 2 hours. So we're not going to be doing that. And we're going to be just going there. But if you want to read that, it's available to all of my patrons as well as other exclusive videos and goodies and stuff like that. Right off the bat, getting into it, we have both stances made available to us. We have defensive stance and battle stance, so we can do some stance dancing. Some early points we want to get are War Machine, Spell Reflect, Heroic Leap, and Thunderclap. I just did that in reverse order. My bad. Rallying Cry, Leeching Strikes, and Furious Blows are going to be kind of your mainstay picks all of the time. You do have other options as well. I really like Impending Victory. It is a 25-second Healthstone that recharges when you kill something. Very, very nice. 10 rage. Blizzard seems to be ramping up environmental damage and kind of big hits. I don't know if this is to compensate for the healer meta or whatever have you not for, because in Season 2 and 3, there was not a lot of healing, so healers were expected to do damage. So maybe by ramping up environmental damage and things like that, that's what it seems to me anyway. Like, whenever I was using this, it seemed like everybody was going down at the same time. So, especially while you're in progression content, Impending Victory can be very, very strong in situations where you just can't mitigate damage. I'm not, this is not a button you're going to press every 25 seconds, but it can absolutely, it just helps your self-sustain, right? If you go from 100 to 50, you can hit this and go back to up to 80 and let your Ignore Pains and Leech and everything bring you back up. I personally think it's very strong, but you can obviously choose another talent of your choice here. Intervene, always very strong. Berserker Rage, this is insanely situational. This is a button you're never going to press unless you absolutely need to press this button. It is just very rare, but there are some heroic dungeons where you get incapped until a totem is down. There's some fears and things like that. So this is going to be a dungeon by dungeon basis whether you want Berserker Rage, but it's not going to usually be a default pick. So coming down to the middle portion of the tree after this, Concussive Blows, because they just recently moved this with Barbaric Training, they swapped these places. Or you can go Sidearm. Sidearm is kind of just free damage. You don't have to do anything, it's passive, but it never really did much. What I would choose is Concussive Blows. Your cooldown of Pummel is reduced by 1 second, great option, and successfully interrupting an enemy increases the damage you deal to them by 5% for 10 seconds. This is, very strong for priority targets or anything like that, and you're going to be kicking a lot in Mythic Plus anyway, so you might as well just get free damage out of it. I still like Barbaric Training, although it does mean that you do have to watch your rage a little bit more and you can go a little bit spammy, but I do like it a lot. And obviously Seismic Reverberations. Just very strong revenge talent. Fantastic all around. Of course, we're going to go Blood and Thunder and Double Time. Then we have options to go down here, right? So we have 7 points left to spend, and how we spend it is really up to you. One of the things I like doing is going down Fast Footwork, grabbing Frothing Berserker, putting 2 points in Crushing Force, grabbing Reinforced Plates, and then we have 2 more points to spend. You can go with honed reflexes, but with all of the auto attack speed buffs that we're getting, Shield Slam is almost never, like 98% of the time, actually ever going to finish its entire cooldown without you getting a proc. Shield Slam is proccing so incredibly often that it's crazy. So honed reflexes has lost a little bit of value, but now you get to put 2 points in where to, what you want. Options being intervene, always very strong, always very good, always very fun. You can go with bounding stride to have a lower, a lower heroic leap and some extra movement speed. Stormbolt is a 30-second cooldown, 4-second stun. It is ranged. This is one of the reasons why I like this. If you ever have to move away from the boss, it is something that just deals damage at range that isn't heroic throw, because heroic throw doesn't deal damage. You also have options like intimidating shout, 1.5 minute full stop for up to 5 targets. 6 targets technically. The one you're targeting in 6 more, which is probably going to be most of the size pulls, like really. But these are also options that you can take. Wrecking Throw and Shattering Throw, I really didn't find many uses for these in the dungeons that we tested, but I can't say that there are none yet. We just still need to kind of find them. We've only really been able to test 3. But there definitely are options for you to take here depending on kind of what you want and what you want to do. You can also go with Pain and Gain for some extra healing. Anything that I just caused like a flex point of saying you can take, I'm not building a here's the perfect build, but this is where we're going on. Then we go down to the left side here, grab Armored to the Teeth, super strong ability, Avatar, and Unstoppable Force. Unstoppable Force is insanely good, but there are going to be times where we're going to use a movable object, but we're going to talk about that when we get to the spec tree. One-handed specialization, dude, with leeching strikes and this, we now have 10% leech and an increase to our one-handed weapon damage by 5%. Very, very strong. After that, you want to go down Endurance Training, Shockwave, Rumbling Earth, and Sonic Boom. They have now buffed Shockwave to the point where this is one of our highest damaging abilities, especially in AoE. This deals damage like a truck, and the sustained AoE is insanely good. Really, really solid pick all around. And then you can go 2 points into Wild Strikes. Haste increased by 2%, and your auto attack critical strikes increase your auto attack speed by 20% for 10 seconds. So with this, with Furious Blows and this, you'll have 25% up, and our auto attack speed buffs are not done yet. This is kind of one of the main options with some of the flex points, like I said, going in. So like Pain and Gain, you can obviously swap it. Crushing Force is another one where you could also just go one. If you want to take Pain and Gain, you can take these two here. The nice thing about the Prot Warrior tree is it is customizable and tailored to kind of how you want to play. So if you want to have more stuns, you can do that. If you just want to kind of focus a lot more on damage, you can do that. Utility, you can do that. Like whatever you need is really, really solid for you going down. Now, when testing this, I did test one build in particular that kind of surprised me, and it's this one right here for the class tree. I took a point out of Rumbling Earth and I put that 1 point into Thunderous Roar. And I tested the same dungeon at the same level with both builds. And what would happen is I would have much bigger burst potential. Sorry, let's put the 1.1 in specialization. I would have a much higher burst potential, leaving Rumbling Earth out of the mix and going with Thunderous Roar. In a poll in Academy, I peaked at 193k with this build and the build that we're going to kind of going on here, using basically everything. Something I had not been able to do that high of a burst with just the Rumbling Earth. Although, if you go with just the Rumbling Earth Shockwave build, you are going to have a higher overall. Your sustained AoE is much, much higher. And when you have Rumbling Earth on and Booming Voice, Shockwave and Booming Voice, demoralizing shouts, cooldowns, are effectively the same. Sometimes you have to hold Shockwave for like a second or two, but you can usually use Booming Voice for the 20% damage amp and get off a Shockwave very comfortably, very reliably with minimal holding of either one. Sometimes depending on kind of whether you have Avatar going or not. I've seen Demo shouts between 25 and 32 seconds, usually, like, depending on how Haste is feeling and all of that. But you're completely able to pair Demo Shout with Rumbling or Shockwave by picking this. And that allows you to have a very high sustained AoE. So, just to reiterate, Thunderous Roar with Shockwave Sonic Boom, much higher burst potential. Much higher burst potential. But if you're going just Shockwave, you're going to have a much higher AoE as a whole, and it's gonna give you a much higher overall. So that is the Warrior spec tree pretty much in a nutshell. Those kind of pretty much go for raid as well. Actually, we'll talk about our raid build afterwards. Ignore Pain. We're basically going to go down here and, kind of choose your basics, right? But we still have a point left to spend, and we have two options to take here, and not one of them is Improved Heroic Throw. Brace for Impact or Unnerving Focus. So we do have the Conduit returning from Shadowlands, where Last Stand increases your rage generation by 50%, but Brace for Impact is new. Using Shield Slam increases the damage of Shield Slam by 5% for 16 seconds, and it increases the amount of damage you block by 5%, stacking up to 5 times. I have been a very big fan of this talent, and I've noticed that on boss fights that, have given some of the other tanks trouble or anything, I feel that much sturdier, where especially with that going in as a prot warrior, I know I can take... There are some bigger hits that can cause me problems. Brace for Impact has been really, really good and all around solid. I really, really enjoy this talent, and it's something fun to play around and gives you a buff to upkeep. But if you do not want Brace for Impact, you can go Unnerving Focus, but there are builds where I have taken both. So we will go down here as well. I really like Bolster. One of the reasons I like Bolster is, oh my god, Shield Block is so much easier to maintain, guys. So much easier to maintain. 85 to 100% uptime on Shield Block, and Bolster is part of that reason. Good Play is another one, but going from all of the trouble that we've had to keep Shield Block up in Mythic Plus or Raid in Shadowlands has been a nightmare, and it's so nice to be able to see, like, oh man, I got 40 seconds of Shield Block left. That's super nice. But this talent is not 100% needed. With proper min-maxing and proper play, you could actually get away from Bolster if you want, but I think most prot warriors are just straight up going to take Bolster, which also includes the synergies of Unnerving Focus. Going down the middle here, we have Rend, because you took Blood and Thunder. Do note now that you do not need to put Rend on your bar, you just need to have it talented, so when you hit Thunderclap, 5 enemies get Rend. Life is beautiful. Blood Surge! Your bleed effects also now grant you 5 rage. So this is Deep Wounds, Rend, and Thunderous Roar if you were talented into them. Shield Wall, this is basically a mini banner. Really, really good. Shield Wall, Anger Management, this is the choice that we have here. So we do have Impenetrable Wall and Unbreakable Will. Unbreakable Will is Impenetrable Wall, is very personal. Like, it's kind of your own thing. Shield Slam gens more rage and reduces the remaining cooldown of Shield Wall by 5 seconds. All around, solid pick. It's going to allow you to be more defensive and more tanky. But if you so choose, you could go with Immovable Object, which is the Protection Warrior Signet and Tormented Kings version of that. Activating Avatar or Shield Wall, cast the other at reduce effectiveness. If you go into Unbreakable Will, Shield Wall grants 1 additional charge. Great! And grants 50% of its effect to all party members. There are big hits. There are big environmental damage hits. If you know when to time this, you can easily give your party, just by hitting Avatar or Shield Wall, a 4-second 20, I think it's 20% damage reduction? It might be 25. I can't remember. Sorry. Brain, stop. Up way too early this morning. And on way too much coffee. So it's kind of this, like, peaks and valleys things. Yeah, that's great. But you are able to, like, mitigate a lot of damage for your party if you play this correctly. Now that you're sacrificing your own damage to do this, and your own rage generation to do this, because you're talenting out of Unstoppable Force into Immovable Object, and you are talenting into Unbreakable Will, which means you're going to have less shield walls overall, but those shield walls can be put to very good effectiveness on big party hits. And I think you're going to see this immovable object, Unbreakable Will combination being played by very high-end organized players in pug groups. If you are a really good tank and you know what you're doing, you could literally be giving power word barriers to your party members, pretty much like a little mini version of it, like every 45 seconds to a minute, just with Avatar alone. Very, very strong. But Impenetrable Wall is a really, really good option for you to pick. And then Enduring Defensive, Shield Block lasts 2 seconds longer. So if we go down to the so Shield Block does have a 12-second recharge. 8 seconds of Shield Block just makes this so much more smooth to play, so much better to work with and run with. And that's mainly because we cannot take heavy repercussions, and I'll explain that in a second. Challenging Shout, 2-minute cooldown. Thunderlord reduces the cooldown of Demo Shout by up to 3 seconds. You need to hit 3 targets with Thunderclap to be able to do this. Very, very strong in AoE, and I mean, reducing the cooldown of Demo Shout even on single target. Boss fights, any bit counts, right? Into the fray. Now, I was testing heavy repercussions. I loaded my gear with Haste Verse, and I mean loaded, through crafted, through PvP vendors, everything. And I was able to get 30% haste without Into the Fray and play heavy rep, and I took out my point in Enduring Defensives. And honestly, it felt great. I had a good time. The problem is I did feel the haste loss, because there is that break point between 30, I think it's between 34 and 36%. The math could be wrong, but there is a break point in there where, you do feel it. And less haste kind of sucks. Early in the expansion, especially as you are gearing and you're not getting to those haste breakpoints yet, you're going to be going with Into the Fray baseline and probably Enduring Defensives. But once you get enough haste that you're happy with, you can go with Heavy Repercussions and not use Enduring Defensives, because Heavy Repercussion is going to extend the duration of your shield block, and we have more than enough attack speed buffs that you're going to get enough shield slams to really be able to buff that shield block duration where you don't need this. So you're going to be able to open up another talent here. But until then, this I think is going to be the play. Something like this is going to be really, really good for pretty much all Prot Warriors. Is this what all the top ones are going to run to min-max their build? No, but I think the average Prot Warrior picking up the spec, this is something they should go with until they feel like they can min-max their defenses a little bit better to be able to kind of, live and survive and not have a problem, because Protection Warrior is all about being proactive. We're coming from a season where we just have a lot of reactive tanks. Death Knights take damage, heal it back up. Prot Warriors do not do that. Prot Warriors are all about mitigating as much damage as possible and not taking it. You don't want your health bar going down, and you have many ways for you to do this. With Ignore Pain, Shield Block, Demo Shout, Shield Wall, these are all insanely good abilities, as well as Spell Reflect. So when you're playing this spec right, you should not be taking a lot of damage. And that's going to be a completely different playstyle than some people are used to in current Season 4 of Shadowlands. A couple of flex options that I think are really, really good. My go-to is Show of Force for Mythic Plus. The Conduit's coming back, more Thunderclap damage, more Revenge damage. Let's go. Revenge are always in the top 3 of my damaging abilities, Revenge and Thunderclap. And there's the nice synergies of Revenge, Thunderclap with Unstoppable Force. Another good option for beginner Protection Warriors is Tough as Nails. Blocking an attack deals damage back to the attacker, ignores armor, and generates high threat. Now, this is going to allow you to maintain threat better, but isn't going to help you with snap threat better. Because to generate high threat, they originally have to hit you first. And if they're hitting your Windwalker friend, or your Fury Warrior friend, or your Havoc friend, this ain't going to work for you. This will help you maintain threat, but is not going to help you generate initial snap threat. So that's something you are going to have to watch out for. But this has been doing about 5% of my damaging keys when I have been running it. Very, very interesting. I haven't seen Prot Warrior have any threat issues anyway, but I've been having a lot of fun, and I'm usually pulling 40 to 45k overall in a dungeon, so my damage is usually enough to keep threat. But for beginner Prot Warriors, Tough as Nails is very, very good. Spell Block, I have not found a situation where this is super crazy useful yet. There is going to be one, I'm sure. Just haven't found out what that is yet. Bloodborne, Deep Wounds, Rend, and Thunderous Roars bleed effects deal increased damage with 2 points up to 20%. These are your extra points that you want to put in whenever you can, right? If you do have some flex options and you want to move away from, let's say, enduring defensives, increase that bleed damage. It really is apparent. Rend deals very good amount of damage and things like that, but I have been enjoying Show of Force. Special shout out to Disrupting Shout. This replaces Challenging Shout, reduces the cooldown by 30 seconds, increases the yard by 4 yards, and it interrupts all spell casting within that range for 6 seconds. This I found was insanely good in Ruby life pools. There are casters all over the place. If you just charge directly into the middle of it, hit Disrupting Shout while everything's casting, and a lot of them are already doing like a precast, like into the water and stuff. Just charge into the middle, hit Disrupting Shout, everything just groups right to you. Insanely useful, because one of the problems that Prot Warriors had is group pulling casters that are kind of sparsed out all over the place. This helps fix that. Very niche, but where it's useful, it is very useful. Coming down the middle here, we're going to go down to Shield Specialization. These 3 talents here are all insanely good. Booming Voice, Indomitable, Violent Outburst. All insanely great options to take. Shield Charge has been so much fun. Honestly, guys, Shield Charge has been so good. I've been having so much fun with Shield Charge. Champion's Bulwark. Shield Charge deals more damage. Grants you shield block. It gives you a reprisal little legendary. Generates more rage. Battering Ram. Shield Charge. Critical strike chance and critical strike damage increased by 15%, and shield charge increases your auto attack damage and speed by 20% for 20 seconds. Very, very strong, super fun to play with, lots of fun. I also pretty much always grab Focus Vigor. Stats are always good, increases strength and armor by 5%, and you have the synergies of Armor to the Teeth, which you gain strength equal to 4% of your armor. So you're gaining strength here, and you're gaining armor, so it just kind of plays off one another. Now here is kind of, you have 1 point, and you don't know where to put it. I have been going with Ravager, as I have not felt in danger as a tank where I have needed Battle-Scarred Veteran. Ravager is now on a 1.5 minute cooldown, twice as long as it is in Shadowlands, but they've also buffed the damage to compensate, and Ravager slaps. And it also generates 10 additional rage, 10 rage each time it deals damage. This is still a very good button to press, but you might not need it. A build that I was playing with as well is I actually took off Champion's Bulwark because rage has not really been an issue for me. The shield charge increased damage is really, really nice. I have played with this, and I went with Storm of Steel, which reduces the Ravager's damage by 40%, but now has 2 charges and increases and the rage increase is 15 rage every time it deals damage instead of 10. This allows you to have a Ravager for every single pull, and the rage generation off this is actually kind of insane, and it still slaps. It's still really good. So there are some customizations to what you want to do here, but there is going to be a point in Mythic Plus where as you are running higher keys and you're going, survivability is obviously going to be an issue. If you're just running 15 to 20s, you can get away without Battle-Scarred Veteran, because most of the time in those keys, you're going to proc it on a 3-minute cooldown. You're going to proc it when you're trying to wipe. I have, on my Death Knight, kept Purgatory on, going in from a 23 or whatever, down to a 15, 16, help some friends get some weeklies, or just get my weeklies in, or whatever. Forgot to take Purgatory off, and something happens and we're calling for a wipe, and I'm taking extra long time to wipe because my cheat death proc, which is the worst time in the world I wanted to proc it, because it's not being useful and it's killing time. This can be the same sort of scenario, but once you get into progression content, mythic rating, high keys, whatever high keys are to you, Battle-Scarred Veteran is a solid option. 80% damage DR, 100% healing received for, when you drop below 30% for 8 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown. It's kind of like a mini pseudo cheat death. It is insanely good, but this is the kind of the main build that I've been running with in Mythic Plus, and just having a great time with it. Really solid options all around, really good. Do note, shield charge is actually off the GCD. You can just be going through your revenge avatar duration and hit shield charge in the middle of, you know, your global going off, and you're just doing a lot of damage. You're getting the stun off. Really, really fun to play with here, and this is one where I found my overall was pretty much always the highest. But I did test around taking endurance off and unnerving focus, enduring defenses, sorry, and going with unnerving focus. But the rage generation has actually just been fine. Like, and on top of that, it was fine, and Blood Surge was bugged and not working, and I never felt like I was lacking rage. And taking Ravager with a Storm of Steel option, what'd I miss? There we go. Taking Ravager with a Storm of Steel option meant I always had rage anyway, more on demand than with Last Stand. So there's a couple of things that you can kind of flex around and move here for Mythic Plus to really enjoy that kind of playstyle. Now, as we go into raiding, we're going to be removing off Shockwave, I think. I think removing Shockwave is going to be the play and going with Thunderous Roar. From a single target, bringing it down to 1 minute, and increasing the bleed damage on said target is going to be very, very strong. Better than Shockwave, because obviously raid bosses can't be stunned, so you're losing that utility. So you can go more into bleeds. And in single target, I would be taking off Ravager, because you don't need it, and putting more points into Bloodborne, taking Show of Force off, because you're going to want your bleeds to be doing most of the passive work, and on top of that, it's just kind of, you know, that's... Show of Force is not as good in single target as it is in AoE, but still fairly strong, but Punish here becomes really, really good. In single target with Brace for Impact and all of the Shield Slam buffs that we are getting, Shield Slam is your #1 priority button. Hit that every time you can, because it is your highest damage dealing ability. Shield Slam slaps, man. It is so good. So those are some raid options that you can go with the spec tree. Obviously, with the class tree, I have Stormbolt here. You don't need that. You can go with something like Berserker Rage or an extra healing, or, you know, you could also take Concussive Blows off for most raid encounters, because you're not going to successfully kick stuff in most raid encounters, but it is going to happen. Sidearm would be your kind of better play there, just passive damage. Have it done with. Bitter Immunity is also kind of one of those things that's very situational, but you can go with Bounding Stride. There are some really good options here that you can pick for yourself. The tree is very customizable and moldable to what you want, and I'm looking at the time. I have been talking for 27 minutes. I told you, and this is the short version. If you do want the long version, you can check it down in the Patreon link down below. I'm so excited for Prot Warrior, guys. It's actually unreal. From someone who has played Shadowlands Prot Warrior since Season 1, this is going to be so much fun. Thank you very much for listening. Have yourself a good day, and are you excited for Prot Warriors? I am. Thank you to my patrons. Have a good night, guys, and have a good one. Happy tanking.